to welcome everybody to our February ARPA meeting. And I'd like to thank Chris for his enduring commitment to getting us going here. Hi. Let's see, who has the agenda?
I have one up.
Chris, it's like you finally get to start running, but we're so in the habit of doing it electronically, so we don't. Okay, here we are. Calling to order at 7:16, and he's sharing now. Okay, so review of the January 2nd meeting minutes. Does anybody have, we want to move that and then we'll take questions or comments?
Sure. So move.
Diane moved.
I'll second that.
Mike second.
Sure.
Does anybody have any changes or additions? I just had one, which is on item number 3. We said that we were going to put our ranking survey out through the Addison Independent, which we then realized we didn't want to do because we only wanted to promote it with Bristol people. So I struck that.
Good call.
Anybody else have comments on the minutes? Okay. I think the second thing on our agenda is public.
Look, we've got some new public
we
right
have
there.
Public. I wanted to make sure we acknowledge him.
Right. And he's only lived in Bristol a few days.
Right. This is what we find out while we're waiting for the, did you lose it?
That's okay. I got it right.
Okay. That is our next thing on the agenda, right? So welcome to our public. Would you like us to introduce ourselves?
That would be great.
All right. I'm Porter Knight.
Diane Cushman.
Allison Davica.
I'm Mike Dash.
I'm Betsy Blair.
Chris Burley.
And then our Zoom people, we have Jessica Teets, Helen Young. Who else is up there?
Rob
Rooker, Ian Albinson, Valerie Capels, and Sean at Neat TV.
Thank you, folks. And my name is Ron Dendis. New to Bristol, absolutely loving it. I think I found heaven, and looking to find ways that I can contribute to this fabulous community. So thank you for welcoming me today.
So thank you for coming today. We're happy to have your input, and we're actually coming to the end of our year-long process with this. So you get to see us sort of wrapping up, but it's always nice to get fresh perspectives as we come down the home stretch.
Well, but if he wants to help out in Bristol, he's going to find out about a lot of things.
That's it. This is a good place to see all the things. All right. Next on our agenda.
Okay.
I didn't print it out. Sorry.
It's all good.
All right. Okay. So results of the community survey to rank order the top recommendations. So we have the little document there. That's the harms from COVID. Let's actually start with the next piece, which is the rankings. And Jessica, do you want to weigh in and
I got to share this.
Okay, you can share. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I got to share this.
Yeah. And then maybe Jessica can talk with us a little bit about what she found. I was really pleased at the number of people who responded. And so I want to, thank Helen for putting on a front porch forum. Also, I feel like we got some good response. Allison, thank you for getting that out through the school. Jenny did that twice. Jessica, do you want to explain sort of what it means to be looking at the mean, and then what the top 5 and last 5 at the bottom means?
Sure. So what we did with the survey was we had our choices. We had 20 different choices, and we asked people to rank order them. And so we let them sort of pull the different items into a ranked list. Number 1 is your first pick. Number 2 is your second pick, all the way down to number 20 is your last pick. So the mean on the side just shows people's selections. And so the lower the number, the more people picked that for their top choices. So for example, the Bristol Family Center sprinklers sort of came out ahead. And when you look at the actual rankings, most people were picking that as their first or their second choice. So that's how it shows up. And so the way to read that then is that the thing that people picked most often early in their choices, their number one or number two choice was Bristol Family Center. The LCD message board was the thing that most people were picking in their last choices, like number 18, 19, and 20. And so that's the way to read that list. The next one, the rankings pattern, this was where I went through and I tried to pick out the choices that people were picking consistently as their number one choice, their number two choice, and then their last 5 choices, just so you could see what people were picking. So the winning number one choice was the grant writing position, followed by the Bristol Family Center sprinklers, Turning Point, the rescue squad equipment, and then the heat pumps, air conditioning for Holly Hall. And then you can see the last choices there.
So can I ask a clarifying question, Jessica? So does that mean that, for example, the air conditioning heat pumps for Holly Hall, when you say that was number 5, does that mean that got the 5th most number one ranks?
No. So what I did is I looked at the number of votes for each one of these as their first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice, 5th choice. So the 5th choice pick for the majority of people taking the survey was the air conditioning and heat pumps for Holly Hall. So that's how it differs from that top list. That top list is telling you what's the most popular to the least popular. This one is showing you what people are picking as their number one. So the majority of people taking the survey pick the grant writing position as their number one choice.
Okay. Interesting. Wow.
How many responses were there?
There were 288, but 10 of those were through the preview. So it was probably us. So we just used the 277 that came in on the link that we had posted.
Oh, that's a good response.
Yeah, I was pleased with that response. What other questions do people have?
So this will be shared with the select board?
Absolutely, yeah. And we could share it directly. So Diane's question is, this will be shared with the select board, which of course it will. But the question is, do we want to share it just as is? Or do we want to make some changes? So we got this ranking survey for our advisement. And now our recommendations to the select board could be we could use the mean, or we could use the top 5 and the bottom 5 and let everything else be in the middle. Or we could sort of executive impose something and say, like, our values want to shoot a couple. So, we're going to put these at the top regardless of mean.
I had a question about, I saw a poster already saying that farmers markets are resuming.
Yeah.
So does that get crossed? So these are just my questions. Does that get crossed off?
Yeah. And also Turning Point. Yeah.
Turning Point. I heard the dog park is happening behind Howden Hall.
Privately, somebody doing it?
Or maybe not. Yeah, so maybe not.
So great questions.
Okay.
Farmers market is definitely happening. Dog park is moving ahead, not behind Howden Hall, but they're working on that. And Turning Point got a whole bunch of money. How does that impact us?
And then redesigning on Pine Street again. I keep kind of coming back to that because I thought that was the bicycle committee's thing.
So let's address the first 3 things first. So the first 3 things, your question is, looks like these things are already happening. There might already be money available to them. Should we still leave them on the list? I'm inclined to say that we should still leave them on the list because even if they're moving forward, the farmers market might be thrilled to know that they could access a small pot of money to do promotion. The dog park is moving forward, but they don't have a final site or an amount yet.
Who's there?
The town recreation department is working on it. And Turning Point, I actually reached out and called them because they got that big spread in the paper talking about how much money they were getting from another ARPA source from the state. And I said, what does that mean for the money you asked of us? And they said, we are still hoping that communities will fund us, that money that they're getting is pretty much earmarked for them to infrastructure, and they're trying to build that facility, but they also want programming support funds as well. And the program is not going to be solved by a lump of money, that one lump. So they're still looking for money. They asked, please, to leave it in. So that's to those 2 questions. So I'm inclined to leave them in. I'm open. Helen's got her hand up. And then you had something.
Yes. So I know Jessica addressed this, but I need clarification. So the difference between the top set of rankings and then the bottom, the only ones that seem to not be congruent are rescue squad equipment upgrades that come in the top 5 at number 4. But when you look at the top list, it's pretty far down, a mean of 9.9. So I'm just wondering, Jessica, can you explain to me how something that's so low ranking can end up in the top 5?
Yeah, all that means is there was a lot of variations. So a lot of people, again, the majority of people picked it as their number 5 choice, but then some people had it as their like number 19 choice. And so that's going to then drag down the mean. That's why I wanted to put both of those scores there so you could see the winning choices for their 1st through 5th pick, as well as just the overall ranking. So you can see that like Bristol Family Center and the grant writing position, that those are right at the top of everybody's list across the board. Whereas the rescue squad, again, a lot of people picked it, but then a lot of people said they didn't think that it was that important.
So did no one list rescue squad equipment upgrades as number 1?
No.
Fascinating.
Well, I think some of us did on the committee, but I don't think our opinions have gotten rolled into this.
And we can or not.
Yeah. And I would like to speak to this same issue, because somewhere in your letter or proposal is saying, okay, well, we'd like the select board to look at these top 10 and then maybe go on down the list. I would love to see Rescue Squad and the elevator in the Masonic Lodge make it up into the top 10, because, you know, while you have here that one of our objectives is to serve the broadest number of residents, that doesn't really catch the other part of our discussion, which was hitting the broadest demographic spread. You know, and to make sure that you've got groups like elderly and poor. And so it seems to me it would be nice for the elderly are the ones who are acutely aware of the need of the rescue squad. And they are also the least likely to fill out any of these cards and things because they can't see it. And they are the ones who would want the elevator in the Masonic Lodge to go to the meals and social events that are scheduled for elderly people there. So, I mean, you know, and the elevator is not probably a big piece of money, but I just think that
50 to 75.
See, most of this stuff that you're looking at is meeting the needs of people between the ages of 30 and 59. Okay. And
because they're the loudest.
They are the ones who are publicly engaged.
Yes.
And the thing is, the people who are really poor are not publicly engaged. The people.
Yeah. And they're good points. And I don't think we need to rearrange the thing yet, but those are great points to make sure we're addressing the elderly. I saw Valerie had a hand up, and then did you want to add something? Valerie, did you still want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you a quick update. The dog park has been mentioned, and it was mentioned behind Howden Hall. And yes, that was looked at very closely. It's currently off the table because a neighbor very succinctly expressed their opinion about why it would be incompatible next door to them. So it's off the table, and I think. Under the current circumstances, we're not clear where an alternative location would be.
If I could add something about and again, I don't know exactly why people made the choices that they did, but we did ask people, we sort of gave them an open category to fill in. And Porter and I can share that with you if you want to look through it. But we saw a number of comments about the elevator in the Masonic Lodge, as well as Wren's Nest, where people said that they didn't want public funding to go to private entities, that they were worried about funding things that weren't basically town services. And then for things like the rescue squad, people seemed confused in that they said, don't we, on town meeting day, we see the budget and we approve these things and they have a budget for rescue squad equipment. So why would we pay for it again? So we didn't exactly ask people to express their opinion about each and every one of the choices, but we did give them that open category to write in. And these were some of the comments that came in. So Betsy, that might help you understand, why they were picking some of these things over others.
And we saw on the comment cards some of the same general statements of like not using it for private things. Aren't there already other funds available for for parts that some ideas? So, but back to like the dog park and any of this stuff, the farmers market, whatever the option is, leaving it on here, because that was something that the public, when we first went out, were interested in. When we honed this down. If at the end, the dog park, let's say we put $5,000 for a dog park planning aspect and it never comes about, that money can be reallocated. Or the folks that are involved in the dog park now know they have seed money and they have a very tight deadline to utilize it. If they don't by a certain date, it's gone. You missed your opportunity. Guess what? We're now going to apply that to the blah, blah, blah option instead.
Yeah.
So I would leave. I don't think we should pull anything off from the list at this point because this was a very carefully crafted list.
And I don't think we need to because we were thinking at our last meeting that there's a strong possibility that most, if not all of these 20 items can get covered by that 1.1, especially if there's support available through the town offices to research additional grant money, other ARPA money. So it's not 10 off this list, which is one of the beauties of this ranking exercise is we weren't asking people to pick what would or would not be funded. We were asking them to tell us their preferences so that we could communicate some priorities to the select board. And we can also superimpose our own thoughts to this, so, to your point, Betsy. So if we want to, it doesn't have to be in order of the mean ranking. It doesn't have to reflect the top 5 or the last 5. It could, or it could be some combination of that. So I think we can continue talking about this a little bit.
Well, I thought when we were talking about leveraging funds, and didn't we talk about public-private and different?
We did. And I think 2 meetings ago, we agreed that we would leave on the list the private things because we felt that those things were serving the community and that we didn't want to create new programs that were municipal run. We wanted to see this money used in ways that would serve the community. And if private entities are doing it, so be it. And I think it's interesting too, the distinction people make. So as Jessica pointed out, some people commented about Wren's Nest as a private thing, but Bristol Family Center is also,
that's what I'm kind of right now.
Right. And so one of the things that we had done, when I originally drafted this survey, the first draft that you guys looked at had lumped Wren's Nest and Bristol Family Center together because we didn't want to pit 2 childcares against each other. And we had talked about as a committee that childcare was one of the biggest things we wanted to see funded. So I think as a committee, we're feeling like childcare, absolutely. So we just put it as one, but then good insight, from Rob saying, look, we should let the public see what we were looking at. So we split them back out again. But I feel like childcare is a hard yes. And, if we're going to superimpose anything, I would like to see the childcare things because those were one of the top 3 categories that we saw over and over again. We don't have much for housing, but we do have this for childcare. And I think we should put them both in the same place.
Yeah, and out of the 20, I believe 7 of them would be private type groups. I mean, the Family Center Turning Point, the Farmers Market, the Masonic Hall, the Rescue Squad, Wren's Nest. I thought I saw one more. So maybe it's only 6, but it's still, so.
The skate park.
The skate park is, that's owned by the rec club. Yeah. So if we start getting into the tit for tat for that, I look at all these projects as more, how do we benefit our community? And whether it's private, public, combination of the two, if we can do something to facilitate adding to our community, to me, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I don't think we should think about
somehow we just get signed out.
I think that it's really nice that there are so many people here that are public spirited and trying to use their private money to enhance the community, and they're not doing it to gouge the community. No. They're trying to make available what governmental money can't do. And so you talk about how we're going to, be trying to get, write grants and try to, leverage and, all this kind of stuff. Well, the people that are doing the right things, if they were overcharging, like, do the Masons overcharge? I mean, their meals are $5 or something.
No, they're doing a service.
So just on a different note, anyone online, can you still hear us? Okay.
Yes, you're fine.
I just had a pop-up said that we got disconnected. And I'm like, oh dear God, did we just lose the last 5 minutes of the meeting? But we're still good. Just wanted.
Go ahead.
Yeah, all good.
Well, I can't remember exactly, but I don't think we should get into the public versus private, because we're all looking to support services in this community that makes people's lives easier, or they're happier, or they're. I think it's.
Give me a chance.
That's all.
Okay.
Ian?
And I think that's fine. I think the select boards is on the same page with that. The board has always spoken about that it would help as many people as possible. And so your charge as the committee was to look at all options. I don't think we ever thought about this money as solely being money for the town of Bristol municipality. I think it was always looking at a much broader area. And I know from previous discussions at the select board level, some select board members had expressed concern about the money going to organizations that weren't Bristol based, just as a reminder. And, your list has very, very few of those. But that was one thing that I remember had been mentioned before.
Yeah, the only one is Turning Point, and we don't have addiction support services in town, so
they serve just the residents.
Yeah, that's it. Rob.
So I think that we're having, and the conversation is good, but I think if I remember, it's a little bit unnecessary to spend this much time, and we should just kind of pick how we rank this, because our calculations of funds and this list of projects were almost equal or close enough to consider it equal, that my input is we should just take the ranking from the public and present it as the ranking from the public and pass it on and call that good.
That's a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Yeah.
I just want to ask.
No, we can have discussion now, so you go right ahead.
In my notes, I see that there was a suggestion. I think, Porter, you said it. Maybe we could set aside a small sum of money, 100,000, and the select board can do what they want with it.
That got panned hard last month, so that's a no.
Okay.
But
I thought it was a good idea.
It seemed like it, but I think that the point was a good one, which is that we were charged with this task, and we should fulfill the task we were charged with.
Yep.
And that we are not giving the select board any dollar figures here. No. We're giving them a direction, and we're saying, start at the top. That's the town's priority. Fund as much as you can to the bottom by pulling in extra money as much as you can, and go as far as you can with it. The only change that I would make to the proposal, which is basically to take our item list by mean ranking, is I would bundle the childcares together. I don't want to pit two childcares against each other. I feel like we need more childcare spots, and I don't think one is more worthy than the other. And
I actually would, I agree that the Wren's Nest needs to be on here, and it's fine where it is. My reason why I would leave it about where it is because it is going to have is very little impact versus the family center, which could add anywhere from 15 to 25 additional students. The Wren's Nest told us there was going to be a few.
Okay.
So that's my own. I think it needs to be on the list. I don't think lumping. I think those are two very different programs, and I also have concerns whether or not the Wren's Nest is actually going to make their time frame with the scope and scale. That project's gotten bigger every time I turn around.
Right.
Okay.
And yeah, and I wondered from the beginning if in fact they don't fulfill what their plans are for whatever reasons.
Yeah.
What happens to the money?
So I think they're fine where they are. I mean, again, I think we have the money to do all this stuff.
I wonder, just to piggyback on what Betsy had said earlier, I like the idea of just sort of presenting this is the results of the study, but I kind of like the idea of maybe putting our context on that.
Okay.
Right. In ways that might highlight this divide between the childcare centers, or in ways that might highlight that we're not entirely sure if this particular online sample was as representative of the town at whole, which might mean that some of these were ranked lower relative to the overall town. We don't have the information, so we can't say for sure.
I agree.
But giving a window to the select board, how they might be able to take a sort of halfway critical eye to the list and use that to shift their priorities based on the information we can provide them, I think would be a way that we could kind of have our cake and eat it too, right?
Okay.
We tell you exactly what our segment of the public thinks, but we also tell you the things you might want to consider if you want to make choices that deviate from that.
Okay.
Would be a simple way.
I think that's a great idea because, you know, you basically have taken all these different pieces of a puzzle. You've talked to lots of different groups and collected different information. And, you know, now what you're doing is sort of pulling it together and using your judgment and debating what you think is important, you know, using the criteria that you came up with. So this is just one input and it shouldn't dictate the order of your list or anything else.
Great. That's terrific. I like the language you both used. And also, you know, in fairness, part of the select board's process will be informed by expediency because they have a time frame to follow and, you know, details. So when you have like the Turning Point or the rescue squad has a pretty, you know, they've got some details there. The select board can pick it up and run with it. Whereas other ones they may need to spend more time and invest in. So they can pluck from the list as, you know, all that allows.
Exactly.
So. Okay.
Should we at some point, if they ask for the money estimates that we had, are we going to share what we have?
I don't want to include that in our reporting, but to the extent that
if they ask.
Well, no, to the extent that anybody who put in a submission to Valerie, that's in her spreadsheet, remember from the very beginning. Yes, so she has that and they will have access to that. Right. So the select board, you know, anyone who's put in a proposal, they can see. But it won't be in our report, but will be, you noticed in the report, I had a list of like attachments or links. So we'll make sure that that's public and anybody can get that.
I'd like to say something about, as we're writing this up, you know, when I was trying to figure out language and stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
You are thinking that our audience is the select board. And I don't think so. I think that if there is ever any contest about why did you do such and such, it's going to come back to this. And so I think we need to make sure that we are crafting this as an historical document so that we maybe don't just say Shaw's, we say the grocery store, you know, or so that you know, and don't use initials, don't put BES, you know, and assume that people know that's the elementary school, you know, just know in group jargon and just say, okay, historians 100 years from now are going to be looking at our report. Is it going to make any sense to them at all? You know, or people in DC are going to look at it. I mean, you don't know where it will end up. And I think that it should be in language that people will understand, even if they have never seen Bristol and have no idea where it is.
Great point. Okay, so are we ready to vote to send it to them just with the mean order as is?
Okay.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
A little bit.
It's on the fence.
Do you want to talk about it more and feel consensus, or do you want me to record a no?
You want to put just a no. Let's say consensus is too cumbersome.
No, but I feel like we've done this for a year, and if there's something you're on,
well, I don't want
to go to the select board and have a.
No, I just
like what you know.
Like I say, I feel that we as a committee who have been gathering so much data and trying to figure out everything, that we should give this a look from a demographic point of view and just see, is every major demographic group in town going to look at that and say, oh, yes, I'm on that list.
But we're not adding to the list at this stage of the game. And if we're giving the whole list to the select board, are you proposing that, would your no vote mean that you feel like we've missed something in this whole year? Or is it just because the ones you think serve various demographics are not adequately represented high enough on the list?
Right. Because of the way we're presenting to them, like, oh, you just start at the top and run on down. I think that that we should somewhere give attention to different demographic groups and not just do things that work for the middle group that's socially active and outspoken.
But there's only, like, for example, if you take the example of elderly, there's only 2 or 3 things up there that specifically address an elderly.
No, that's why I think they should be up higher.
Now you're pinning demographics against demographics.
And I mean, I could make an argument that 3/4 of these, I could go through and make an argument, 3/4 of these touch the 65 and over crowd.
Sure, the farmer's market, outdoor space,
the skate park, probably not. A better sound system, absolutely. So
air conditioning in Holly Hall, certainly.
Yeah. So I agree. This, I don't think we want to get into, again, where these rank. Again, I believe if any of these projects have their act together, they will get funded at some level. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're asking. And what we looked at, when we looked at the numbers at the last meeting, that in all reality, we put ballpark numbers against these. It's the ones that we had estimates from the people, we did that, and then we guesstimated the rest. And it came into around $1 million with all 20 of these. So if one of these falls off, because let's say the outdoor meeting at the library doesn't work out, I'm just picking one arbitrarily, those dollars then filter down below. And what we're hoping is actually when they're all done, they can still go to list B and pick a couple out of that, is what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I hope so too.
So I'm not concerned about that's why I'm not concerned where they fall on this list. And again, this is the public giving them input, and us relaying this to them is here's their input. And as Mike said, we quantify it in our narrative of this is what the public's input was, and here's where we weight things a little differently, maybe as a group, in these few instances of whether it's working on focusing on childcare or whatever it is. I think you said it a lot better than I did.
What he said.
And I see the 5 last choices there that are on the screen. Yeah. I mean, they're probably just the 5.
Yeah, they're the bottom 5 here. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they match. Those 5 match identical. And again, having one no vote is okay.
It is okay. I just wanted to make sure that we understand why that is.
Yeah, you understand one.
So I don't know that I do actually. I mean, I hear you saying that you want to see elders served, higher up the list, but I feel like, as others have said, that they are represented. So,
well, anyway, and I guess I have a different idea of elders. I'm really thinking of the over 80 crowd. I'm not thinking about the retired crowd. They're quite active.
That is elderly over 80. That's elderly,
right?
For sure.
Right, and those are a lot of them are not going to go to a farmer's market because they're not that mobile. And
Right,
that's why I'm, you know, having tried to hand out ARPA stuff when they were having people, you know, come for picking up food, you know, and there were a lot of people there like couldn't get out of vehicles.
Well, yes, but there are also a lot of really sturdy elderly people around here.
Yeah, well, I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you call for help when you need it, or you.
Because I don't want to beat this horse, but,
No.
but using that example, none of these would benefit somebody who is virtually a shut-in.
Except maybe the rescue squad.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
That's why I'd like to be sure that Rescue Squad makes it up there.
But it's on
But
okay.
They can take their wheelchair to the Masonic Hall for lunch.
And that's what we're hoping.
Once there's an elevator, yeah. Okay. So one no.
If you're sure that those two are going to make it, then
the motion is to present this directly as is. I have good confidence that the select board will get those things, but I can't sit here and tell you that it will get funded because I'm not in charge.
I mean, we can even put it at the top, and then we can't make that guarantee.
And it's actually true, right? We're not
This
the
is a
price
recommendation.
all right.
This is a recommendation
I will not be
being submitted.
obstructionist.
I mean, so we have a yes.
No is okay.
And no, it's okay. I just want to
Because
make
it
sure,
doesn't change.
I just want to make sure I understood it.
Right.
So
Because there's no way we can
right. But
rearrange all
yeah.
of this.
It's
because
so
this is how it was.
if you want me to write no, I will. I
Determined.
just wanted to make sure I understood so that if I get called, like, why did you have a committee member say no? Say, you know why? Okay. But are we?
All right, you can put it down that this is what
Well, I had written no, and then you said no, and I crossed it off. I'm just
But I'm not no is a dead horse. You know?
I'm not trying to change it. I just want to do what you want, and I wanted to make sure I understood. So, whatever. Now I'm confused. I feel like I'm pressuring you.
No, I think there's way too much pressure in the last few decades that we all have to have consensus. We all have to absolutely agree, and I just don't think that's human. You know?
So you disagree. So it's
yeah, it's okay, and it's like I'm not going to go get a picket sign around.
Okay, great. So what's next on the agenda? Oh, I know. You know, we didn't talk at all about the other side of the page, which is the negative consequences due to COVID.
Go back to
And you know, we didn't really have an active plan for using this information. We included it because it was a question that Jessica's students had been asking, and it's just sort of seemed like it might be interesting to see how Bristol residents compared to some of the larger sample of county folks who answered that. So I don't know if people have questions about it, or Jessica, if you want to say, how did we compare to, you know, others in the sample?
I thought that was really, really interesting.
The graph,
I really
yeah.
like that. As
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, it's very small.
Yeah, and I'm trying to make it bigger without losing it. I
Yeah.
can't.
Jessica, do you want to give us any info on that?
Well, the question was a little bit different than the one we asked in the general survey. We had more categories, so it's hard to do a direct comparison. Like, for example, we didn't have the mental and physical health questions. We just had increased healthcare costs. But you can see that, you know, adult mental health and like social isolation and anxiety were the two biggest choices there.
I didn't have any specific plans for including that information, but we'll include this data in the links, and we could reference in the report that those findings.
I'd love to see that in the report.
It will be. I mean, all
all
of the data will be linked. Oh, you mean like that actual chart?
The actual chart, I think, is very impressive and does say a lot about what COVID did. And I think it really hits you because, you know, there's just not a lot of people who, you know, you meet in the grocery store and they say, you know, I'm having a nervous breakdown, you know, or did you know that my kids have all, you know, gotten to be drug addicts or whatever? You just, this is something that is very quiet. Mm-hmm. And so it's very easy for those whose families are not destroyed to be pretty much unaware of it. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is one of the most important things to discover graphically.
And it does tie into the connection of COVID related.
Yes. It relates to the recommendations that we've shared.
It ties in there.
And since we have said that we're not pushing the mental health worker because it's a long-term thing, then we really need to underline that it is a long-term problem. And so we hope that long-term funding will cover this need since it's the biggest need we've got.
Great. I'm writing notes. Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Jessica on that? Okay, we'll include it in narrative as well as the actual chart. All right, next on the agenda. I'm not doing my most prize-winning timekeeping today. Thoughts on the rough draft of the report. This was a total stab in the dark. I'm open to feedback on it, either at a macro level, like, wow, you're way off base here, or at a micro level. Betsy gave me some good feedbacks on, like, clarifying language and, spelling things out for the historical record, which I think is helpful. Thoughts? Is this what you guys were picturing or expecting?
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it. It was well done.
Good enough. I think all of these things that you're just sort of roughing in from minutes, that they should all be in past tense. We decided, not, and you have got a lot of times that you're saying, well, we did such and such from April to May. Who cares when we did it? Forget it. That if they want to read the minutes, they can find out when it happened. But for the record, you just need to say, like, canvassing the public. We did this, 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 and this, but you don't have to say which month we did it, because it doesn't matter to anybody.
I think it does matter because I think that it makes the point that this committee spent a solid 6 months doing outreach.
Yeah, well, then I think you should just state that.
The whole document could be parsed down to about a paragraph and a half if we want to parse out stuff that's overstated. Kind of so I like the fact that it's not going to harm anything having this year, and I feel,
can smooth out the narrative. You're right, because there's some cut and paste chunks in there. It's a very rough draft, but
there's
smooth out the
narrative too.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. You can be sure to tell me because I might miss them.
Well, it said stated instead of.
Do we want to look at it right now on the big screen and talk about it? Is that what you want to do, or you want?
I'd rather get feedback. Like, I don't want to try to write a report by committee because that's messy. But I'm totally open to receiving. So again, macro ideas, more of this, less of that, or micro ideas. This sentence doesn't make any sense, or I think you misstated. Whatever.
Okay, here's
starting at the top. That's
right. And you gave me your point.
Yeah, so here's another one. You've got on this is page 1. After your 3 bullet points, the committee also reviewed the ARPA requirements and so forth in League of Cities and Towns. That should be up here in the paragraph on purpose, that we clarified our purpose, that before you start going into how we gathered the data and all of that, because we did first figure out what it was we were supposed to do.
I'm trying to keep that top part really lean, sort of like an abstract.
There's only 2 lines.
But I don't think that, so I think really our purpose, that was literally what the select board told us in our letter we were to do. And everything else is what we did after that. So I'm inclined to leave purpose as that's what they hired us to do. End of story. And I don't mind having it down below.
I mean, if anything, we might move it to the top of that section, more towards the top here where it starts talking about the committee meeting. You want to bring it up for more emphasis. You could add it. You can move it into here somewhere. And then
at our first meeting.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
We just did it sort of in order. Like at the first meeting, we did the hopes and goals, and then we did the VLCT and ARPA.
Right.
I don't know. I resist putting it up to all the way up top because I want to keep that simple. I think honestly, there will be some people who only read those first 3 paragraphs and then go to the list of recommendations.
Okay.
So
Yeah, they're like, that's the summary. It's all I'm going to read.
Done.
I don't
Right.
need to look at anything else.
but yeah, I'll smooth out a lot of the language.
Okay.
Yeah, I
That's a
like
lot of work.
the
Yeah,
overall
that's
structure.
good.
That was really good. If we are going to have this sort of committee's commentary on the list, I don't know if you have add an extra paragraph in those recommendations at the top, just as a point of, here's what we're presenting you.
Right.
Here are other factors that we think you should consider. And I think that in line with, I think, the very smart idea of giving of essentially an abstract at the front would necessarily need to be a condensed and concise little paragraph. But if we have any commentary in terms of how we want them to also consider that list, it feels like it could be added in that first part under recommendations.
In that,
so you have purpose recommendations, it looks like.
right. And then a little
And then a
bit
paragraph.
of editorializing about some things.
Some things like, as you consider
Okay,
the public's
right.
recommendations.
Okay, so we propose that you do it this way, and then
We
that would
think
be-
we think it's salient to point out
Write this out.
the following, right? And then, something along the lines of like, 3 major themes emerged as the most pressing needs for Bristol, right? Some of these are reflected in the list, some might not be as reflected, right? This isn't a sign of a need, it was a sign of what projects we felt could actually be implemented. Whatever the line of thought is that we want to just kind of color the list a little bit.
right. So, and then we have the point about the mental health needs
Exactly.
that we had talked about.
The
how
mental
important
health,
that
and you
was.
can reference the chart, right?
Okay.
We can have that, a comment, I think, to Betsy's point, that while the final public list did have a large sample size of nearly 280 Bristol residents, it may or may not be fully reflective of all demographics. And so the select board should view the list, right, with that, information, with that,
sensitivity.
with that sensitivity. Beautiful. And then I'm going to stop, because if I keep going, it will not be short or concise. but
You're doing great.
But those would be 3 or 4 things that we say, yeah, this list we really like, but here are the other things to have. And then you're done with that for the recommendations. And then you can get into the narrative of how we talk to those places.
I'm going to try to capture that.
Yeah, and I'm also happy, Porter.
You will look at it.
Yeah, I'm also happy to look at it and throw in edits or suggestions.
Or do you want to craft the first run at it?
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I'll massage that in, and then you guys will all see this again.
It's a lot of work. Thank you for doing this.
Well, you guys did the work. I just cut and pasted it into a document, but yeah.
Could you be okay with expanding the first bullet point to serve the broadest number and demographic spread of residents? Or
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I'm not sure, like the demographic doesn't.
Broadest what?
I like the. It's almost like with the most diversity or the most
largest spectrum.
There we go. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Okay. And then the second bullet point, it says invest parenthesis, not ongoing expense. I'd like to have that put in words that make sense.
Suggestions?
Sort of a one-time investment, right?
Not an ongoing, right? A single expenditure?
Well, and I would see if we can get another word than invest, which sort of sounds like stock market or something.
So single expenditure that would invest in our future.
Well, why don't you just leave out invest?
I like invest.
I like invest in our future. Even I want to, but I'm whatever. Anybody? Rob?
Projects.
Why are we crafting on what our goals were?
How about projects not involving ongoing expense?
To your point, Rob, I don't think that we're recrafting what the goal was. I think it's just that goal came out in sort of a, it was on that Venn diagram, but we never really wordsmithed it. And to Betsy's point, like somebody else might be wondering kind of what we meant. But
right.
That is what we said. That was what was on the Venn diagram.
Right. But
So then we just simplify it to one-time expense, not ongoing, and leave it at that.
Okay, got it. Do we want to pick at the third one while we're at it, and then we'll be done?
Well, I am fairly literate, but the circles I travel in, I don't use words like leverage. So I would like to know what that means. If you were explaining that to a 10-year-old, what would you say?
I'd explain leverage.
Yeah, well, go ahead and do it.
You've met my kids. Bring in more. Spend this, attract more.
Okay, why don't you say that?
Okay. You got in the driver's seat while you were going. I didn't give you
Drank too much water.
overhydrated. Okay. Attract additional funds to Bristol. I'll just take the word leverage out.
Yes.
It was already there.
Yes.
All right.
Perfect.
So I'm going to be gone all week. So if anybody wants to send me stuff, have at it. If you go through and you have thoughts, just email it to me. And when I get back next week, I'll, put it all together, try to massage it all into a piece again. And then I'll get some proofreading on that and then send it out to you guys again.
Yeah, because
it's not going to go to the select board before you see it again.
You could just use your pen to just change this word "o" into being "or."
Yep. I think that was the one you had pointed at. Okay. Consider our goals and discussion from the first meeting to evaluate our progress and identify any lingering concerns. I didn't bring that. I just wanted to take a minute and ask everybody, how do you feel? Did we do what you were hoping we would do? You feel like, we've got to the place that you were wanting to be at. I just wanted to sort of just do a little roundtable and see, how we feel overall about what we did and how we got there.
I think we did an amazingly good job. It's when you see on paper the list of things that we did, and you think about how we engaged the community, it was really excellent. And if you read in the Addison Independent what other towns did not do, it's pretty amazing what we did. So I think we did a good job. A lot of it is a reflection of Porter because you are the organizer of the world.
You know what? This group, everybody did stuff.
And then everybody did do things.
Yeah.
Everybody helped in different ways. Allie did the whole spaghetti dinner.
And wrote the PowerPoint.
Well, yeah.
We all contributed.
Everybody contributed.
Yeah.
Good. What do you think?
This is here for the tech stuff.
So the end, what we produced is a great thing. I may not agree with every piece and part of it, but at the end, I feel that we created something that our overall community is going to benefit most greatly from. I mean, there's a lot of people who said, no, just put it in the road budget and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's the easy route. I know Middlebury
did that.
So, and I'm glad we didn't do that because that's why I wanted to sit here and make sure that we look to the future of our community.
Yeah, and ask for needs.
And we looked at needs. We looked at what people needed.
And we asked them what they needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was happy.
It was huge communication.
And this, I've said on, it seems like hundreds of committees over the years. This has been one of the more functional.
Very even.
Yeah, and productive, I think. Yeah. Jessica really helped a lot.
I mean, so grateful.
Yeah.
Whether or not it goes into the report, but I think that it really would be good to have kind of an outline of how we did what we did. I have a sister-in-law who put together a project for basically getting women on welfare to where they had their high school equivalency and had learned how to take their kids to the Smithsonian. I mean, just and meet with a counselor every week and figure out your goals and all this sort of thing. And she put together a really good program for her county. And it got picked up by Congress and exported to all over the country.
Wow, nice.
So like if you get a model, I mean, there's no reason why we can't create a model for that other towns, could look at and say,
A little pink.
I guess we could go to the grocery store. I mean, if you
band concert.
if you list that, if you just make it so it's a cookie cutter, that because this is probably not the last time that governmental bodies will want to get public input. So, as you're working on the language and everything, think about, how to make it user friendly for other people.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody else? Feedback, comments?
Yeah, I'm just like looking through my notes from like one of our first meetings, and I bulleted help as many people as possible. Mm-hmm. Lots of engagement opportunities. I feel like those are two things that we talked about very early on. Yeah. Community participation. Wrote that with a bunch of stars around it.
We're guided by your bullets.
Yes.
Yeah. To Betsy's idea of this as a model, I wonder if it's worth putting even just a sentence or two in the report as a suggestion to think about reconvening a similar type committee at some point down in the future. Like obviously this was spurred by the presence of ARPA funds, but frankly, I don't actually know if that's necessary, right? I mean, I think maybe the most important work that we did was the engagement with the community. And it's great that we can spend that money and actually address some of those needs. But I could imagine in 10 or 15 or whatever the time frame is, years from now, repeating a big chunk of this process to get a sense of where Bristol is.
Well, I had the sense that the select board was very interested in us gathering all of the ideas, even the ones that didn't really fit in ARPA, just so that they knew what the town wants.
Exactly. So maybe
it has to be done every 5 or 10 years.
Sentiment that this really worked, sharing that with the select board as you may want to consider convening these types of committees as you move forward to update our sense of where Bristol is at and what Bristol needs, even in the absence of specific funds, because it might allow you to help address the sort of issues.
That's interesting. That really speaks a little bit to what Jessica's class was presenting at the January meeting about that disconnect between public community members' desire to have input on decision making and select boards feeling like, well, our meetings are public. We posted it. Why didn't they come? And that's sort of like, and actually, when I was interviewed recently, I don't remember who it was, but about Bristol's process. And the woman said, so what, how can select boards get this type of engagement? And I said, I know, but they can't. Like a select board has too much to do. Like they can't do what we did.
Right.
Like, but they could ask a group to do it, to your point. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Right. You say like, we want to hear from the community. We convene a group with the mission to be like, go hear it. So that's a great idea.
Every 5 or 10 years to do it. So almost like a community barometer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, maybe call it a community needs census every 10 years.
Great idea. Yeah. And that also, you guys, ties in really nicely to the idea of what I want us to talk about at our April meeting, right? So we're going to wrap up, but I want us to meet at least once after the select board gets their thing to make sure that we're sort of taking the list of things that didn't get on the top list and making sure that they have a presence in the community somewhere, whether we hand deliver certain ideas to certain organizations or groups, or whether we just work with the town to have them be in a separate
paragraph on that in here.
Exactly.
Somewhere. Yes.
And saying that like we're not going to be done with just this top list.
The PS at the end is maybe say, okay, there needs to be, some things need to go out now, and then there needs to be community needs census on a regular basis.
I like that. Valerie.
Yes. I think that a lot of this overlaps with the Planning Commission's mission and purpose. The Planning Commission's mission is very broad to identify community needs. And I think the work of this committee has contributed a lot to valuable information that they'll be able to use. But I think we need to find a way to engage the Planning Commission to help continue this process, or I'm not sure what word to use for that, but this type of engagement.
We have Rob on our committee, but Rob, we could also, we could come as a committee, or delegates of us could come with you to present this to the Planning Commission, a little bit later this spring, so that,
the only reason I'm shaking my head is that right now, and Rob will agree. I mean, I sit through their meetings with them. They're in the middle right now of a zoning rewrite, and you really would be queued up sort of possibly in the fall.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Do you agree, Rob?
Yeah, I do, especially the way it's been progressing with how our meetings have been. They've been jam-packed of trying to get through this stuff.
Good ideas for how to carry it forward.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So what's the feeling about is the select board going to really take our recommendations as a priority, or do they? And I say this because early on, when I was talking to someone at the band concert, he said, it doesn't matter what I want. The select board has already decided what they're going to spend that money on. It's all spent. I said, no, it hasn't been. But that has hung in the back of my mind thinking, is that possible?
No, it's not possible. I speak as a select board member and the chair of the select board at the moment. The money has not been spent. It's sitting there waiting to be decided by you folks.
I do believe though that a very small smidge was allocated to the police department was it ARPA funds or undesignated reserve, undesignated fund balance?
That was unassigned funds.
Okay.
We haven't spent, the only money that ARPA spent has been spent by the ARPA group to put on the things that they did for the committee.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Okay, I was just worried about that, Ian, so thank you.
I think it's safe to assume that elected officials are going to want to have the public like what they do, and they're going to.
And they're
going to want to know what's in
it. Someone pay for the sidewalks.
It's not unheard of for a select board to not always take a full recommendation of the committee, but this has been a very public process with a lot of community investment and engagement, and a lot of media coverage, frankly. And also we've had Ian and Valerie at almost all of our meetings. So I feel like I think they're going to take our recommendations and do the best they can. Good. And so I will work with Valerie to figure out exactly which meeting in March is going to be best for the select board for us to present this to them, so that everybody can put that on our calendars, and then we'll coordinate our timing to have additional conversation. So we're all ready to go for that meeting for what we give to them. Do we want to have any type of visible poster announcement or any activity at town meeting? We had talked about maybe putting these 20 things up there and letting people take a sticker on the way out of voting and just put it on things, just as another.
We gathered that data. I mean, I think we've sort of settled.
No, we
have a great output.
Data.
That's true, but it is more visibility, and what would be the harm? And we'll probably have, I don't know how many people vote, Valerie, a lot more than 300.
I mean, if anything, I would be inclined to take that list and present that list of here are 20 things that we've come up with.
Out of 500, we narrowed it down.
And pat ourselves on the back a little bit,
and announce it and have
just to announce
and the exposure to the public, so that all the stuff they said, a lot of people were like, hey, they did listen.
Right.
Yeah.
This isn't just sidewalks and sewer mains.
Yeah.
Rob.
Sorry.
Idea.
That was going to be my comment, that it should be a presentation at that, unless we're prepared to take whatever data we additionally gather and do something with it. We shouldn't gather any more data or ask for it if we're not going to do anything with it.
So is there any downside for us of posting this and announcing it formally in a town meeting setting before we've delivered it to the select board, or does it not matter?
I mean, posting the letter that she's sending?
Showing the 20 items.
Post it as an update. Just the list. Here's where we're currently at.
In all reality, this meeting is public. It's recorded. That list was on the screen. So it's not like we're hiding and holding our cards close to our
And they've seen all the items anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, I think putting together a poster again.
Well, what about
thank you for your help and thank the public.
Thank you for.
I think it might be good to have, in addition to the list of the 20 top winners there, would be to have another page that says that we are not working on things that require ongoing funding. And that's why Bristol's critical need for these things are not covered, but we strongly support them becoming covered in a long-term way, because then people will understand that the thing that they wanted that isn't on the list is something that would require ongoing.
Or it just, I mean, some of the stuff we got was so abstract it wouldn't have made it regard.
Or inappropriate. You know, somebody wants to put solar panels on Mount Abe. Well, that's not our business what goes on Mount Abe.
Well, and I think at town meeting, the truth is that there's so much movement in and out that just one poster that says, thank you for your participation. Here's the items which are being recommended, more details, because
less is more in this, I think.
And just not a handout, just a poster. So, and it's really about thank you.
Board. Here you go.
And then we'll have,
I'll work with Valerie too to see what kind of space we have available to us between that and Sharon, the town clerk. And
do something that's on one of those like foam core things that's flip chart size.
Potential again, that's if we can get that much real estate.
We can get that.
It's busy. It's a very busy small foyer.
Okay.
How about?
But I thought we're talking town meeting. It's in Holly Hall.
It is, but all that information usually is out in
outside.
Oh, is that
outside? Well, we could put it in the back.
If there's
again, I don't know what's there. I will work with the powers that be, and if they tell us we get a 10 by 20 square, we'll make a 10 by 20 square that knocks the socks out.
Okay.
I think I still have that that.
Oh yeah, the
thing,
thank you.
The thing that said, what does Bristol need?
Yeah,
and then we could put right under it. Here's what Bristol residents picked. And
can you bring that in for him?
Yeah.
Oh, do you have it here?
No.
But I saw it recently trying to clean up the garage, so I know it's still there.
It's there.
Will it fit in your car?
It's just paper.
Oh, okay.
I mean, what'll happen is some of the letters I'll have to re-glue because I do it with colored paper. I just glue, cut it out and then.
So, as far anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say again, thank you to Jessica and the students for everything. I don't think we'd be where we are without that assistance and data analysis and input and everything else, whether it was for academic and interest reasons or selfish, trying to fill out a lesson plan reason, whatever it was, it doesn't matter. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure to work with you all because you all had such great ideas and such passion for finding out, how best to spend this money. So it's been a great process.
Great. Valerie.
Oh,
that's an emoji.
She's clapping. Great. So I would like to.
I don't know how to get it down.
I think it'll go away. I think it goes away, but you can just keep clapping.
Oh, okay. I guess it'll just go away.
I would like us to just schedule the first Monday of April for us to meet as like a wrap up and to talk about getting the rest of the ideas out. And then I'll work with Valerie to figure out what day in March can work for us to present our ideas to the select board.
And when's the town meeting? What day is it?
Town meeting is, what's that first date?
It's like the first
March
Monday after the
7th.
first Tuesday.
March
Tuesday,
7th.
March 7th.
Yeah. So,
But the town meeting, the Bristol town meeting is the Monday evening of March 6th. Right.
So it's the 6th.
Yeah, I get those confused sometimes. The
Yeah,
ballot,
voting
the
is-
Australian ballot is the 7th.
Our presentation to the select board will be one of the subsequent Mondays. So I'll let Valerie steer me to that. But if we go ahead and plan to meet on April 3rd for our wrap up and getting ideas that are not on this list. I think that'll probably be May.
That may be the Mayor June wrap.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. That will happen.
Okay.
So,
Okay, good.
Good to
we
know.
can wrap
I'm
it
writing
formally
it
in
down.
this space.
Yeah, so April will be our.
Yeah, we don't have to record that. That's fine.
There will be no Zoom involved.
Yeah. That's a
look
deal.
at this
All right.
skeptical looks on.
Audio cut out. We couldn't hear any of that.
It's probably better. So
I just
quick question.
pretended that they were planning a big party for us. That's what I pretended was happening.
We really did.
I mean, we kind of were.
Say party for somebody.
Are you kidding? Because we kind of were. That's what we're doing.
So are we going to meet in March?
No, we won't. I think that we will not meet again until we meet with the select board.
Okay.
But I'll make sure that you all have a chance to review the report before it goes to the select board. And then Valerie will tell me what day they want us.
First.
And then we'll meet in April, which will be our official end of committee meeting. And then we'll have an unofficial end of committee meeting in May.
Do you want to meet with the select board before your April final meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay, why don't you aim for the night of March 27th? It's a Monday.
Is that what
27th.
27th.
Okay. So, do we have to take a motion to adjourn?
I was going to say, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right. I agree, right?
I don't think you do.
Thank you all. Great evening.